Every night before I go to bed and I close my eyes, I say, every day in every way, I am getting better, better, and better. And that goes back to the Jose Silva method.
Where'd you discover this guy?
Just like anybody else, just kind of bombing around the internet. And I think that's kind of what my algorithm became, just a lot of positive environmental things and how can I make myself better. It's been a long journey, so you kind of have to pick yourself up at times because it's, there's peaks and valleys.
Right. Hit me with that quote one more time.
Every day, in every way, I am getting better, better, and better.
This episode made possible by Restaurant Systems Pro.
With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, owner of Epicureo Pizza, Tony Carbone. My man, Tony, are you feeling unstoppable today?
I'm always feeling unstoppable.
Yes, brother. Psyched to be here. So you were referred to me by Tim O'Brien over at Cornicello in Exeter. He had amazing things to say about you. I love what you're doing here. I love the space you're in. I think this is a really unique space, so I can't wait to get into that. And I love, it seems like you really built your business around your life. And you have a great bounce.
It's, 100%.
So we'll get into that too. But before we dive into who you are, how you got to where you are today, let's get that motivational, inspirational, ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for us?
Every night before I go to bed and I close my eyes, I say, every day in every way, I am getting better, better, and better. And that goes back to the Jose Silva method.
Okay. So who's Jose Silva?
Jose Silva, it's a lot of like manifestation stuff.
Okay.
So I think he was back in like the 70s or 80s and just a lot of, mind and focus stuff and visualization.
Okay. Where'd you discover this guy?
Just like anybody else, just kind of bombing around the internet. And I think that's kind of what my algorithm became. Just a lot of positive environmental things and how can I make myself better. It's been a long journey, so you kind of have to pick yourself up at times because it's, there's peaks and valleys.
Right. Hit me with that quote one more time.
Every day, in every way, I am getting better, better, and better.
So do you wake up and say this to yourself, or how often does this quote come back into your life?
Oh, every night. As I go to sleep, I kind of sits in my subconscious a little bit. And it could be for anything. It's whether it's like your health, your career, your family, just anything you kind of want to focus on. And it's just, something a little bit positive as you drift off to sleep. And I say it to myself about 20 times and get into kind of like a sleep meditative state. And that's...
How do you think this has served you?
I think it served me well because I think if the last thing I'm thinking about each night is something positive, it kind of clears my head. And I think it allows my subconscious to kind of bring whatever other thoughts that need to be, come to the horizon while I'm sleeping.
Yeah.
And I wake up feeling better. But going to bed on a positive note, I think is so important because as we go to sleep and our body's healing ourselves, it's just to have the mind in its purest place.
Can you think of a specific time where you maybe weren't feeling like things were going to get better every day, that you kind of said this and it kind of instantly shifted your gear?
I would say definitely when we were building out Epicureo, because that was a challenging time because you could kind of stamp the word naive on my forehead, trying to do my catering gig. I have a couple of kids and trying to juggle all these things and get down here. And when things, you're expected to just go all right, we're just going to hit the ground running. This place is going to be open by the fall. It's going to be awesome. And then you hit the speed bumps and then you're like, oh, I didn't think of that. And oh, really? There's that too. And, and I think that's kind of how a lot of first timers look at it because I've spoken to a lot of people who have done it and I know people who are going through it right now. And so, there were some dark times when it's I'm never going to get this place open. I'm an idiot. Here I am 6 months into my lease and I feel like I've taken one step forward. And so I'd have to kind of sit there, take a deep breath and kind of put those words into my head that you're going to be better. It's going to be better and keep myself positive and then just help myself kind of visualize the plan I had, why I was doing it. And that I know that the end result would be everything that I had desired if I just kept my, thoughts forward and not let the negativity creep in.
Dude, this industry is 90% mindset. Like it will wear and tear on you. And I think it's that buoyancy, that ability to stay up when you have to, because like you're going to get knocked down. So you have to be able to bounce back, and just having that positive mindset of like, all I can do is all I can do. And if I can just keep showing up, if I keep putting that pedal to the metal, it's going to get easier. It's going to get better. So great way to get this thing started, dude. I love it. Where does it make sense to start sharing your story? Like how long, like what were you doing before Epicureo?
Before Epicureo, I was involved with pizza, but it was mobile catering. Okay. And I didn't have a truck. I had a couple of rock boxes, which are like 45-pound degree little ovens. They're kind of like, there's uni, there's rock boxes. But
what year is this?
This was 2018.
Okay.
So that's when I started to strictly dedicate myself to the pizza. So prior to that, from 2010 to 2017, I was doing prepared meals, private chefing, catering, cooking lessons. I'm the kind of guy like just throw it against the wall. If it sticks, we'll do it again.
Yeah.
And then if it doesn't, all right, I love that. I hated it. We're not doing it again. And I was cooking I left radio. I was in radio and sales. I managed radio stations. And that was from, I'd say, about 2000 to 2010.
Okay.
And that was great. Had a lot of fun. I met a lot of great people. The money was fantastic. But as I kept going along, I'm like, no matter how good the salary is, this sucks.
Right.
And I hated it.
So you were in sales?
In sales.
So what were you selling?
Airtime, radio.
Okay.
So going around and working for like, selling like Howard Stern back at that time. And then there was, I was working for Infinity, which is like
Comcast.
CBS.
Yeah.
Oh, and then Clear Channel.
Okay.
Back when like Clear Channel was like the worst enemy of the world. And why are you working for Clear Channel? Oh, they pay?
Yeah.
And so that was, and then, but it was like a burnout factor. I could have stayed on that trajectory and been, completely different life right now. Like financially, I feel like we'd be, comfortable, and, I'd be probably like looking towards retirement, but that wasn't my bag. Like I was.
What were you missing?
Everything. Like I wasn't happy. Like, I'm not a person, I don't have a lot of material wants, and I just want to be happy. Like to me, I was like, what am I doing? I'm not like creating anything, and I don't know. It just didn't feel right. And I just knew that no matter how much money I made, I wasn't going to be happy. That wasn't the elixir for my soul.
Was there a tipping point for you where you decided like enough is enough?
I think, I think once I got to the point where I wanted to be a national sales manager. And that was kind of my goal when I started the job. And I got there and I was like, oh, I'm making the money, and I'm doing some traveling and wearing the suits and like, getting to do the whining and dining a little bit. And it was like, that's it. That was like where I wanted to be. And that didn't feel like I had met my goals. I was like, all right,
What were your goals? Just to get to that title?
To get to that point, and then see where it went, because I thought that was like, all right, and we'll see where it goes from there. But once I got there, I was like, I'm done with this. And I felt like I was just miserable, and my wife could see it. It was, coming home from work, and it wasn't even putting the ice in the scotch. It was just.
So, so you're in your 40s now?
Yeah, I'm 46.
46. So this is like, so your early 20s basically, or your mid 20s into your early 30s.
Yeah, I think. Let's see. I left in 2010, so I think it was about 32.
So 14 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, from your late 20s into your 30s, were you cooking at all?
I was always cooking.
Okay.
Like I was like when I was a little kid, my mother, I wasn't the best student, but I got a good report card. And my mother's like, "What do you want?" And I was like, "I don't know. How about a walk?" And my grandfather, my mom's father, he was a chef down on Wall Street. So I never met him. He passed away before I was born, but somewhere I think it was in the blood, and that was. I think my uncle who works here, my Uncle Ed who works at the shop, and my mom, I think were a little choked up, a little verklempt when I told them I was going to go to culinary school, because it was like, wow, this is what their dad did, and it was, kind of coming full circle.
So you're 34 years old, and you decide you want to go to culinary school.
Yeah, like 32. So,
32.
But yeah, and it was like, coming from a 6-figure salary, and I'm like, and my wife's like, she was like so supportive of it. she's like, something's got to give. You need to do something. I'll support it. We just bought a condo in the South End in Boston. Ideal timing? No. And so I give her, everyone's like, oh, you're so brave. God, you have such balls. You're doing this. I'm like, no, it's really her.
So, yeah, do you have that support financially from her, too, where you are able to do this?
Yeah, well, I mean, she was, she took over as the head of the household. I mean, we took a significant income out of our life. And, we had done a lot of saving because, like I said, I didn't have a whole lot of things I needed to buy. And
you don't have any kids at this point.
No
kids. You mentioned off camera before we started recording, your oldest is 12.
Yes.
So no kids at this point. You don't have a lot of liability.
No, we just a mortgage and, but I think at that point we were starting to discuss starting a family.
Right.
So that's, I did put a major obstacle in our life.
Right. Was that scary for you? I mean, especially with all the social pressure to be the man of the house, the breadwinner, and all these things to put that on the back burner to pursue your passion.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Humbling and terrifying. I went for a little bit. I was waiting tables at a restaurant, and I'm the low man on the totem pole in this restaurant, and I'm like, oh shit, man. 2 weeks ago, I'm wearing a nice Italian suit, and I'm taking people out to dinner, and now I'm taking orders from a 23-year-old at this restaurant, and I was just. So you just have to swallow that because it's all right, you're gonna have to eat shit to get to where you want again.
So what was your vision when you start to shift gears in your life? When you have this cushy, secure job, your soul's not really being filled, your cup is kind of empty. You have this decision to get into food. What was your strategy? What was it? What was your plan going to be to get to where you wanted to be?
Oh, this is my wife's favorite part because what is the plan? And I was like, well, it's going to be okay. And she's like, well. Yeah, just because you say it's going to be okay, that's not a plan. I'm like, oh, honey, it'll be okay. And I think she knew that I would work hard, and that was the thing that gave me confidence. I was like, I knew I would bust my ass to get back because you don't have a choice.
Right.
So sometimes I think when you take all the other options off the table, and the only option you have is to get to where you said you're going to be, or to get back to where I was.
Right.
Then it's to work hard. And that's, that was the only thing I could do was just work hard. But it was, I kind of wanted to go into the cooking field. And I was kind of psychotic. Here I am taking my therapy and wanting to make it my livelihood.
Yeah. Were you aware of that when you were doing it, or was that hindsight?
No, I was aware of that. And, but I just, I had to try it. There was always some sort of calling to me with food. And even we had lived in Boston, we were in Chicago, and even when I was in Chicago, I looked at Le Cordon Bleu, and I kind of always thought it would be awesome to be a private chef or a personal chef, going to people's homes, and that was my goal. I was like, here we are, I'm 32, I'm married, we're looking to start a family, so going into the restaurant, as the career wouldn't work out, because, that behind the scenes, the late nights at the restaurants, my wife and I would have been crossing ships in the night, and then that restaurant family, and it's oh, so you got in at 6 a.m. last night. Well, yeah, I went drinking with everybody after work.
Right.
So I reality of that was that would not work.
All right.
I'd be divorced in 3 years.
And here you are owning a restaurant.
Yeah, but on my own, on
we'll get
my
into
own,
that.
Our terms.
Right. I like that. I like that a lot. So you went to culinary school. Where'd you end up going?
I went to Cambridge Culinary.
Okay.
And I'm a culinary school dropout.
Okay. So you got in there. Was it not what you thought it was going to be? Why did you drop out?
I was there for maybe 6 or 7 weeks, and it was to me it was it was slow. I was I feel like I just needed to a more faster pace kind of thing. But then I had the opportunity to go on a show, and then the parameters of the show were well, it's either you come on the show or you stay in culinary school. So I was all right, well, I'll go on the show. And then
what was the show?
It was the first season of MasterChef.
Okay. I did not know you were a master chef.
Yeah, I don't always promote it too much. There's people my friends are so I came across something on Hulu. I'm oh yeah. I'm be prepared to be disappointed.
So this was 2012, 2013?
2010.
2010.
Yeah.
So how did you find MasterChef? How did you even get on their radar?
it was one of those things where I read something. My friend Reagan had sent it to me, and I had also seen like a listing for it. I think I was just probably looking for like odd jobs on Craigslist at the time, just to try and compensate income between going to school and like waiting tables and just whatever it takes. And I saw the opportunity for that, and I was like, oh, maybe that's a sign from like the universe. And I went. I did the audition. You know, they're like, oh, you got like 2 or 3 minutes. You know, what's your sales pitch? I was in there for like 15 minutes.
What was your sales pitch?
I was just talking about like myself and my love of food and everything. I can't remember like verbatim, but I just went in. It was myself, and like for 15 minutes, and I was like, oh, I have this. I think, and then it was like a 20-step process. You had to go to New York. You had to film videos. I mean, so much legwork. And now, I mean, and my wife was excited about it. I was excited about it. But at the same time, it was like, oh, well, I wasn't looking for another fork in the road this quick into, you know, the new world.
Right.
And so.
How long were you on the show?
I was out there for about 7 weeks. I made it to like the top 10. I made it into like the cookbook. So
out of how many?
I think 100 people originally, or so. And then it went to like top 50, top 14. And that was, you know, but that was great. That was like just kind of a sign maybe I'm on the right path, but it was like kind of distorted things a little bit, because it was like, here I'm trying to like keep my head down, go to culinary school, get my shit together, and, you know, like rebuild the life that I just like.
What was the what was the prize to that show?
I think it was $250,000
to invest in whatever you wanted to do, or
I believe it was a cookbook, $250,000. Yeah. And then I think, you know, you had contractual obligations, and but yeah, that kind of like, it was an incredible experience. And I was able to put flyers on like people's cars, like, you know, hire a personal chef as seen on TV, you know, and it was like, when else am I going to be able to associate myself with Gordon Ramsay?
Right.
In one breath. And
what was he like off camera?
Oh, he was great. You know, the guy's like, he's like a marketing genius, you know, and this is one of the shows where he kind of has more of the kids' gloves, and they let one of the other judges kind of take that Simon Cowell approach to things. But he was great, you know, it's just.
So eventually you're off the show.
Yeah.
Where were you when you were off the show? Were you feeling deflated, or was it just a cool experience? You're happy to do it?
It was a cool experience. Yeah. Like I messed up, like I was an idiot. And so that was a little bit deflating, but then I went back out.
So what do you mean you messed up? You're an idiot.
Well, this is actually.
Am I bringing back trauma right now?
No. This is like people break my balls about this. It's like all the time. I'll still get like messages from Indonesia 12 years after the fact and be like, seriously, dude, like a passion fruit or star fruit. It was an identification like test for like a
challenge.
Team. Yeah, challenge. We were eliminated. We lost the competition. And there was a star fruit on the table. And at some point I had heard that like, oh, a star fruit was a passion fruit because it represents the crucifixion of Christ. You know, the 5 points. It's not because it's sexier, it's Caribbean. And I have this in my notes from when I had heard it. So I'm on the stage and I see it and I'm like, oh, well, chef, if my upbringing as a Roman Catholic boy has taught me anything, this is a passion fruit representing the crucifixion of our Lord Jesus Christ. You know, the more you ham it up, the more time you get. Thank God I think that was all edited out. And like I see him looking and I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm so wrong. I'm so wrong. And, you know, and that was that. So now people like, I mean, my family would buy me ornaments, like star fruits, passion fruits. People would take pictures of it in the supermarket. And in fact, we have a big Halloween party every year. And we have on our menu the Forest 4 cheese, which is named after a family that was very good to my catering. And so they have 4 girls. I use 4 cheeses. That was like my tip of the hat to them. So Adam, who's the father, for our Halloween party, he's wearing a star fruit shirt.
Okay.
Just to break my balls. And like, I'm like, what are you? And he's like pointing at the shirt. And I'm like, well played. Last year, him and his wife and the girls, they were like mean girls. and he had a burn book, and like he dug in and found like bad reviews that I had, and he put the burn book together, and I'm like, Adam, I'm starting to sense a little hostility here.
So you had overall it was a good experience. You were able to use that experience to brand yourself and to market yourself. When you came out of that show, was the plan to just go straight into opening your own catering or a personal chef?
It was. I was like, I'm not going back to school. I feel that I have some of the chops that it takes to, like, you know, if I can do this in front of a camera, like I can probably do it in somebody's kitchen when they're not home.
Right.
And I always thought I had enough, you know, experience to do that, but I just wanted to, I guess, have something on the resume. And I was like, well, this might be a good resume builder.
So when did you start your business for your catering or your personal chefing?
I started it, so that was, I would say 2010, maybe it was 2011. You know, the timelines of trying to, regardless, I got home probably that April or May, and I started getting everything established, like the paperwork, the LLC, all the certifications. So I wanted to say I launched in about September. So it was 2010 because we went to Italy in 2011.
Okay.
China.
What up, Unstoppable restaurant owners and operators? We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that Restaurant Unstoppable and Restaurant Systems Pro, we're taking our relationship to the next level. Beginning in July of 2024, Fred Langley, CEO of Restaurant Systems Pro, is making himself available once a week in Restaurant Unstoppable Network to answer all of your restaurant systems questions, whether it's be profit margins. He will look at your P&L. Bring your P&L. He will take a look at that. He will dissect it. He will help you find your profit, whether that be through budgeting, inventory management, costing recipe cards, labor, checklists, you name it. He is a master on restaurant systems, and he's making himself available to you. Fred Langley and Restaurant Systems Pro started as a consulting firm, and for over 16 years, they've been helping their clients increase their profit by 10% or more. What are you waiting for? Click the link below to join our Facebook group, Restaurant Unstoppable Network.
Got it. So how long did it take you to get that business going to where, you know, you could have like a decent income?
It was actually kind of hit pretty well right away. I had supportive friends who, you know, so they would have parties. You know, my buddy Brian, you know, he was a manager for a radio group. I did a big barbecue for them. So I was able to really, you know, get out there and get my name to big groups of people all at once with like low pressure situations. And I would say probably by the following summer, things were like really starting to come along. I think I had built maybe a roster of like 5 or 6 families.
Okay. How regularly were you cooking for them?
Weekly and bi-weekly.
Okay.
So I would go in and do like anywhere from 3 to 5 meals. And then some people wanted it every other week. Some people weekly, depending on their
schedules and
their
stuff.
Situation. And I would, by 2012, it was great. I probably had like 10 or 11 families I was cooking for. It was great because it was like finally starting to say, all right, we're starting to make some money, like starting to, you know, pad the bank account again. And then it was like, you know, then we had a baby, and then it was like, oh my God, like, all right. So then we got daycare and this and that. So it's just kind of like, you know, it's like up and downs of everything.
What was your wife doing for work during this time?
My wife works for a consulting firm. She does like recruiting, and she helps him with like marketing and everything. So she was doing that, like, thank God, like great company. And then the, so that she was just plugging away at her job. And then, you know, she, but probably added stress to her, because especially now she's pregnant, and it's like, at least we eased it up a little bit during that time. But you know, I guess
so you were able to build your business up a little, get some additional cash flow coming before you brought on the new addition to the family.
The new addition to the family. Yeah. So it's I feel like we're always bobbing and weaving.
What were some of your struggles in the early days of being a first time private chef?
It was, you know, how some of the issues, I say the hardest thing I think was pricing. Like, do I want to price myself out of it? Am I too cheap? Am I too expensive? I think always became like a yes man. Like, oh, you need this? Yes. Would you mind prepping some extra vegetables or stuff and for like, you know, little Timmy's snacks? Oh, of course, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And that was the hard part. And I think kind of...
What happens when you say yes all the time?
Then people just take advantage of you.
Yeah.
Like, I would go in and like, oh, if the kitchen looked all shitty and everything, and like, oh, I'll just clean that up, because I didn't want to work around that.
Right.
And I think maybe at some point, maybe people, you know, a few people would be like, oh, he'll clean it up, and would leave that. So, and it was just, you know, it was a very paranoid feeling also, because am I saving them for enough money, like on the shopping bill? Are the meals okay? Did I give them the proper reheating instructions? And it was just...
Right. So, like, 2018 is when you decided to go all in on pizza.
Yes. We, like, in the middle of that, we moved out of the city to Newton Corner. So it was great. At that point, too, I be walking my dog in the city, and, you know, we had a great dog, and people were like, oh, what kind of dog, blah, blah, blah. And next thing you know, I'm handing out business cards. So I could drum up business just walking through the city. I was doing holiday parties for all these people in the South End. I was in with so many people. People would be like, oh, we were at the restaurant the other night, and there was people talking behind us, and they were talking about you. We were talking to friends about having a dinner party, and they're like, oh, well, we want to use our guy. And they're like, no, we want to use our guy. And it turns out that I was the same guy. So then we moved to Newton, and it was like we were having another baby, and then it was kind of like you're out of sight, you're out of mind a little bit. So I had my regular roster of people that I cooked for, you know, my families, but like the party circuit kind of died down a little bit because people didn't see me as much. So that, you know, you see something, you think about it, right? It's like, you know, it was like my own form of advertising.
Yeah, out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
Right.
And then at that point, though, my wife had started really getting the bug to move up to Newburyport. We moved to Newton as kind of a soft opening to the suburbs for me, because I was like, I love the city, and I was like...
Are you from New York?
I'm from Long Island.
Okay.
And but I had spent, you know, I had been in the city at that point for 14, 15 years between Boston and Chicago. And I loved the city. It gave me my juju.
Yeah.
So it was... moving to Newton kind of took some wind out of my sails, and then both, like, you know, personally and professionally. And at that point, too, my wife wasn't a big fan of Newton, and her goal was always to move up to Newburyport.
Got it.
And so for like, I was like, all right, well, we'll get there one day. You let me jump ship and live my dream. You will get Newburyport. Right. I will go kicking and screaming. But
you're here. It's not so bad, right?
No. It's a great place. I just, like, when we first moved up here, I was like, we're moving to Canada. And, you know, and my wife, you know, she hated when I said that. But it's, you know, I just, in good fun. But at that point, her wanting to move up here, and, like, Newton was kind of like, I felt like I was, like, really in neutral at the time. And I said, all right, well, here's what we're going to do. Well, if you want to move to Newburyport, you know, we're clearly not happy here. Let's take one kid out of daycare, and we'll keep one kid in daycare. So I started cooking for just a few clients. Like, I cut down my roster. I would cook for, like, at night for them on weekends. And I was kind of I was a stay-at-home dad during the week, and that's, like, you know, that was great. I got to spend so much time with my son, but I go crazy in neutral, and I couldn't grow my business. So I started studying pizza. Like, in the back of my mind, I always wanted to do something with pizza. In what capacity? I had no idea. Like, I had no real experience at that point. Like, I couldn't even stretch out a dough. I'm like, well, how the fuck am I gonna, like, do this professionally? And I started playing with dough for, like, a couple of years, and I got obsessed with it. And that's when the Rock Box first made landfall in the United States. And I was on that first shipment that came over, and I was like, all right, you know, I'm going to start working this into my catered gigs. And then I told people, like, hey, we're going to do this, everything that you want, like all the fancy, savory stuff. Would you mind towards the end of the night if I put some, like, late night pizzas out? And I'm like, at no charge. I said, this is just for me to experiment. They're like, yeah. So I started doing it, and people started being like, man, you know, this, like, pizza's pretty damn good. There's some wheels here. So the more I fell in love with the process of the pizza and the obsession, then the wheels started going in motion for us to move up here. And I said, you know what? I said to my wife, I think once we get up to Newburyport and once we're settled in, I think I'm just going to go 100% pizza. And I kept a couple of clients to, like, get that going. And that was the goal, and then that hit the ground running, and that hit hard.
Timestamp this for me. When did you make this choice?
This was 2017
Okay.
is when we started getting ready to move up here at the beginning of the year.
Before we move away from the personal chefing, like, any lessons that you learned during that time and things that you had to learn the hard way for somebody who might be listening to this who's thinking about that as an option, like, what should we know?
God, there's so much to know. I'm just trying to think of some of the important stuff that comes to the top. I think know what you're worth, because that is, if you ask for it, people will pay it. Like, don't underestimate your value. I always did, and people are like, dude, you're way too cheap. And once you hear that,
can you share some numbers?
20 times. I used to do, I want to say for like 5 meals, I would do like $250 for the 5 meals. That's not including food. I would separate church and state.
Yeah.
This way, hey, if you want lobsters and steaks, I'll cook them, but I don't want it to come as a hit to me.
So you'd cook anything, and they would cover the cost, and you would just take $250 for the meal
for the 5 meals, and then different pay scales. But I was there. I mean, I was doing like everything from scratch. And so I felt like, when I broke it down from an hourly basis, I was like, man, I was at that house for like
I'm
9
making
hours
$10
today.
an hour.
Yeah, shopping. And I was like, this isn't what I really thought it would be, especially when you have to run back out to the store. So I think that that's an important lesson to learn. And then to get yourself like a nice just a catalog of your own recipes.
Greatest hits.
Greatest hits. And you maintain control, because sometimes people will want something a certain way, and you get their taste, but then if they don't like it based on what they had ordered, like to me, I own that, and I say, all right, I fucked up. You didn't like it. Take it off the thing. So I think you have to maintain control. That's a huge thing, because people, like, as soon as they think that, that old thing, like give an inch, they'll take a foot. It's people will take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think you have to be upfront. Like, this is what I do. I don't do this. I don't do that. Like, I don't do your dishes.
Either you want me or somebody else.
Somebody else.
Yeah.
And that was what I say. And make sure you write stuff down. Like, I was always one of these very liberal cooks in the kitchen. Like, let me try this. Let me try that. My wife's like, write it down. You should really write that down. I'm like, it's fine. But then when you have clients like that you're cooking for weekly, you almost have to treat it with the consistency of a restaurant.
Right.
So if they want that, like, say, a chicken marsala one week, and then they want it again, you have to make sure that that's
as good or better.
Yeah, that it's exactly what you did last time, because
they have an expectation.
And I was always be like, shit, I don't know what I did last time, because I was, I was feeling an ingredient. I was feeling that time of the season. And I tried something different. Oh, it was great. Can you do that again? And then they'll be like, that wasn't quite the same.
Right. So how do you contain, or would you say contain control or maintain control?
Maintain control. I think you just have to be very upfront and not be afraid to say no.
Right.
And then that, even if it means that you might lose that client, it's going to create more headaches for you in the long run if you're catering to their every need that you're, not comfortable with, or just like little things that like make you pissed off. There was at one point I read a quote, and it was stop saying yes to the shit you hate.
Right. Yeah.
And that, like,
good advice.
Yeah, and that hit home. I was like, that's really what it boils down to.
So by 2016-17, when you still had your clients, were you still charging $250, or did you go up on your rates?
I was a lot of them were grandfathered in, and I was like, and I was also afraid. I was afraid, like, if I raised the rates, are they going to be like,
what the hell?
Yeah, because at that point now, you had all these meal services coming out.
Right.
So I was right ahead of that. But then there was, everybody was in it. Like, Martha Stewart was doing it.
Right.
And then you had these, like, not mail order, but people
Blue Apron.
Blue Apron, exactly. I couldn't think of their names. So now there was, like, this other competitive, like, market developing.
Meal kits.
Yeah. So I was like, well, if I raise my prices, like, are they just going to tell me, like, see you later? And then I'm, like, losing the money as I'm trying to, like, develop into something else. Like, I was just trying to hold on to that. And when I wasn't giving myself a raise, I just kept telling myself, listen, you're not going to be doing this forever, like, not so much longer, that, pretty soon we'll be in a different genre for yourself. And so I was just kind of like, all right, I'll eat it for now, and then just make the money I can make, and just knowing that, like, greener pastures were going to come. But every lesson that I learned with the prepared meals and the private chefing, it was, I carried it over into, like, when I started doing the mobile pizza catering. Granted, I sold myself short at the beginning of that, but that was just because I was introducing myself. But I knew that, like, all right, I'm going to charge you this for now, and like I'll grandfather you into that. But as like my business grew more popular, I was like, I will raise the rates. But I set that was like the part of the plan.
So at your peak with the professional cooking, you were doing $250 for 5 meals. Is that 5 people when you say 5 meals, or 5 meals?
5 meals, like four, like probably like 4 portions, like 5 meals, like 4 servings per meal. And
okay.
Like,
so at your peak, how much were you making a week? Like how do you have all these different families that I'm sure they all wanted you on Friday night? You know, like how do you balance that?
Well, that was like, actually with the prepared meals, like Monday was like the pole position day, because this way you would have your meals for the whole week. I mean, at times, I mean, it was probably good. I mean, we're making a few grand a week, I would say. Nice. Especially, and the dinner parties were also great, because that's kind of like where I could be a little bit ballsier. And you know, if I knew I had a tycoon on the other end, I'd be like, maybe $1,200 for that dinner party, and they'd be like, either go to hell or yeah, sure, no one cares. And I'm like, oh, and I would be willing to take that chance.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I also at the same time, taking the route of going like private chefing, prepared meals, was to keep control, have the weekend. So my wife and I still kind of had a life together, you know, before the kids, with the kids, you know, as it all gelled into one.
So you take this risk on the pizza catering. So what parts of your prior business model were being leveraged in your new business model? Were you still doing like going to do house parties, cooking pizza? Like how was that different?
I kind of weeded it out. So like I said, I was doing some catering, traditional catering,
just to keep the money coming,
and then putting the pizza into it. Then I kept a couple of families that I was cooking for. So that we were up here now at like end of 2017. So I was running back to Wellesley,
it's
Brookline,
like a 45-minute drive.
Yeah, back and forth. So it was like, you know, I was eating up a lot of clock, but I just kept telling myself, we're so close to like launching this. And once, you know, finally we signed, we bought the house, and I said, I'm not launching this until like we are physically here. We're 100% sure. I was like, because I can't start and stop again, because that you know, because we were in Boston, like things were cooking, it was great. Then we went to Newton, it was deflating. Then I started getting like my hopes up again. I was feeling good, and I couldn't pull the rug out from under myself again.
Right. So you're up here in 2017.
Yes, and
you're doing the pizza catering.
Well, just about to launch it. So my first party for like when I really focused on pizza was in March or April of 2018. Okay. So I needed to like, once we moved into our home Thanksgiving of 2017. And then I needed to settle in, find a kitchen up here, and like redo all the paperwork, because it was like a different bag. Like I had in my LLC, but I had to go through like different plans. I had to get into the like a shared kitchen space, so you know, because I didn't have people's homes to work in anymore. Right. And yeah.
So what was the model like? Like take me more into like what your vision and your strategy for launching this business concept was like.
My vision was, all right, we're going to like, I really believed in my product. Like I thought I had some kick-ass pizza just based on like feedback that people had given me. And I was, you know, eventually I was like, I would love to open up something. So it was kind of like a 5-year plan in my mind. You know, this is pre-COVID. This is, everything was great. And I said, I'm going to work my ass off. My goal here is to become a known entity. Like eventually I want to open a shop. I don't want to be just another guy who's putting flour and water together, calling it pizza, and have people roll their eyes and be like, oh, great, another pizza place. I wanted to have a loyal following, and I wanted to like bust my ass. So that was my goal with the pizza catering, is to get out there, go wherever I needed to go, and like get my name out throughout New England, whether it was in Maine, New Hampshire, not so much Vermont. I've probably been down to Rhode Island. I've been invited to other places.
So like, what were you looking for? Like festivals, or like what were your opportunities?
Private functions. Initially, I did do a couple of brewery pop-ups, and I thought that was going to be fun. I was like, oh, this is going to be great, man. Like one of my buddies came, and he helped like take the orders and everything, and we fucking no idea what we were doing. Like we went to a pop-up at Brewery Sylvaticus in Amesbury, and so like, you know, I had done a couple of parties, but different bag.
Were you reaching out to them? Like, how are you finding these
They
gigs?
reached out to me. I don't know how people, like, I think word of mouth from parties, because I had done a couple of parties, like I mentioned, the Forest, and they have like, I mean, they were like my Kevin Bacon. Like, I could be in the middle of Maine and somehow everything connected back to them. So I think it was just the local parties, and a lot of the breweries are always looking for food. So maybe it was like somebody who was at a party and said, oh, you should check this guy out.
Yeah. So you're just traveling around with your rock boxes. How many did you have?
I had 3, but I would only bring 2 with me because that was like my dance. And, then I figured like I didn't outright want to do public events, but I knew that that was the best way to like really get the name out there because there's all different people there. And the private parties were like the bread and butter because you know how many people were going to show up. You knew exactly what you needed. The public events, it's like, is it going to rain?
Yeah, you could lose money. You do all the prep and it gets canceled.
Yeah, pull permits and all that stuff. And it's just, it's a different animal. It's like an ass kicking because you're sitting there at like a brewery and I need 2 hours to have the ovens heat up. So it's like sharks circling. It's like, is it ready yet? No, the ovens aren't ready yet. And it's
2 hours to heat up the rock box. Huh?
Yeah, because I wanted to get that. Like, you don't need it. Maybe an hour would be fine. But
you need
I
the hearth like piping hot.
Yeah, I want that like great heat retention in there and time out my dough coming to temp and everything. And it was fast and furious. So people would come and like, I mean, the first time we did it, we didn't even have a notepad. Like, we didn't know what the hell we were doing. And like, we're trying to dish out orders. And it was like, it wasn't a disaster. We killed it as far as like people were happy. The feedback was good. But we're like, all right, we really need to fine tune our public operation a little bit.
Right.
And like,
so the goal was to get your brand out there, to get your name out there, and to fine tune your pizza and your process.
That was the main goal. So
like, how were you capturing emails? Like, how are you building up this audience, and how are you like what was your strategy to do that?
I'm such an old school guy, word of mouth. We'd have like, oh, here, follow us on Instagram, but I just word of mouth. That was I didn't want to capture emails, but because personally I hate that. I hate when I just keep getting like my email box is like saturated with like I just want to buy a t-shirt. Like, can't I just like without giving up my whole life?
Right. And
I didn't want to do that. So that was just me personally. Like, I didn't want to do something that like really annoyed the shit out of me.
Right. So as you're scaling this, like, when did you have like benchmarks you wanted to hit before you were to go into like a brick and mortar, like your spot?
I think it was, it was like a mental benchmark where, I didn't keep actual count. I said, but once I feel like I've heard like 2,000 people tell me like, dude, you need to open a spot because I don't want to like only be able to have your pizza like have a party or like the random times you do a pop-up. Like, I want your pizza all the time. And like, dude, this is so good. So once I really felt that the product had reached like that kind of level, that was my goal. Like and then it was almost like also like an ego drive too. I was like, more people need to have my pizza. I don't know. That was just, you get caught up. You see like how much spotlight pizza gets. And
you said you didn't want to just be another flour water kind of guy, but like what's different about your pizza that it deserves that type of attention and accolade?
I'm an absolute lunatic about the product itself. It took me 3 years just to really get my catering dough down. And we would be sitting there, every weekend. The whole house smelled like a brewery, like when we were living in Newton. And my daughter was like a couple of years old. She's like, this is great. This is how people live. You just eat pizza like all day, every day. And I just wanted to nail it. It wasn't like, I just wanted to be okay. I wanted to be fantastic. And I would always be like, oh, we're going to crack the code. Tonight's it. This is the night. We got it, hon. And my wife, okay, yeah. And I'd make a pizza, and I'd take a bite, and I'd be like, this sucks. She'd be like, nah, this ruined the weekend. I was like, well, it ruins the next 72 hours till I could like try and tweak it again.
Yeah.
And it was just a matter of so much trial and error because I don't know. Like I said earlier, I became obsessed with it.
Yeah.
But it was that kind of like passion involved that I knew that like, I'm like, I had something, and I'm like, and once I had it, it became a discipline to me. It's like no matter how tired I was, no matter, if I'm tired or if I'm short on time, it doesn't matter. The dough comes first. Like, maybe I'll do like a 48-hour dough. No, smack myself across the face. Get your ass to the kitchen and make sure it's 72 hours, because this is like your bread and butter. This is like everything you're basing it on is this dough.
So when did you know you had hit it out of the park, when you had it?
I think it was, the initial reaction, like the first party I did, like the Forest people, that was a bunch of Long Island people. And I was like, oh shit, I'm really throwing myself to the wolves. And this is just the catering dough. And, but they were like, man, this is pretty good. And then I was doing parties with people who live up here, but they were all Brooklyn based. And they would have this party every year trying to outdo each other for these family reunions. And they would like, oh, this would be, oh, cute. The guy has his little pizza ovens. That's great. And they came and they were like, holy shit, man. They're like, this is really good. Like one of the guys he knew I was a Mets fan, and he's like, I hear your pizza stinks and your team's pretty good. Oh, no, your team stinks. And then he's like, holy shit, this pizza's great. Like he was trying to like bust my chops. And so once like you start getting like the Brooklyn crowd and people, who grew up in these really great pizza places, and they started liking it, I'm like, maybe I do have something. And then, because your friends like, all right, are they just blowing smoke in my face?
Right.
And
so where's your product today? Like take me through your process.
All right. This is like, my process is I'll come in, like, say, Saturday morning. I try and get here at, like, 6 o'clock in the morning, early on a Saturday. This way I can do it while the kids are sleeping. And, like, because we can get to that later. Like, my weekends are for the kids and my wife.
Right.
So I'll come in and make the dough. The dough goes from 72 to 96 hours. And that is a must. And like I always go back and forth. Sometimes.
So in the winter, is it 96? Is it because it's colder, or?
No, it's still 72 to 96. It just depends. I would say 95% of the time, even more, it's probably 72 hours. Sometimes life gets in the way, and it'll have to be like a 4-day dough. Like I'll be here on a Saturday, and I was like, oh, all right, we're not going to be here Sunday, so I'll make 2 batches of dough, one for Tuesday, one for Wednesday, and that Wednesday will be the 96-hour dough.
Got it.
And it's like I go back and forth. Like the 72-hour dough, it's great. And the 96-hour dough is like awesome up until like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then I'm like, it starts becoming difficult to work with. Not that the flavor's there and like the pizza still kicks ass, but just from my side of the fence, right. I'm like, oh God, you're a pain in the ass right now.
Yeah.
It's
so Monday or Saturday, Sunday, Monday, you're making pizza. Saturday for Monday, Sunday for Tuesday, Monday for Wednesday, and then you're making dough until Tuesday, and then
So it's Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday are dough days, and so they can have their respective 72 hours to do like a bulk cold fermentation, high hydration,
and you're cooking pizza till you sell out. And what happens if you have more orders, but it's the next day's dough? Will you tap into that?
No, because it's not ready.
Yeah,
it's so what I do is when I come in Saturday, I make the dough. Sunday, I make the dough. Monday, we're closed, but I prep all day. I do, the sauce for Tuesday. I prepare the special. We do a weekly special. And then I'll ball up the dough for Tuesday's service. This way, I'll keep it cold, but I'll ball it up. This way, it has a chance to relax. This way, it just gets to the way I like to work with the dough. So if I tried to go into tomorrow's dough for like today's service, it wouldn't quite be ready.
Consistent. Yeah.
And it would fight me a little bit.
Right.
And then at that point, if I was going into that, we would probably be like slammed, and then I would just start getting emotional. Like inside. Like I'm always smiling, but there's, something goes wrong, and then I just get internally cranky.
Right. So where were you with your pizza catering? When did you open this location?
March of 23.
23. So you're coming in over a year now? You're in
19 months.
19 months.
Or 20 months, I think, somewhere around there.
So 5 years. You were true to your 5-year plan.
Yeah, I didn't, like, that just happened. Like, I originally wasn't planning on even opening a shop in Newburyport. I was like, well, for the business model I have, I think maybe it would be better closer to, like, the city, maybe like a Stoneham or somewhere. Just because it had a train line there, it had family. If college kids liked it, they could just hop on the train and get to Stoneham. I thought that would be like pretty cool. That was originally, but then after COVID and spending so much time with the kids and everything, I'm like, that would kind of be like a little bit of a bummer, like
right.
not being around.
So where was your pizza catering company when it was operating on all cylinders? Like paint the picture of like what an average week was like.
Average week, like especially like once it started getting warm in like April, I mean, I'd probably be doing at least 4 parties a week.
Are these private parties?
Private parties.
Okay.
I really pushed away the public events because there's so much money in the private parties.
How much were you making for like a party? Like, what was your rate?
Let me see what my rate was. I think I had like $275, like kind of like my walking out the door fee. I used to like that was my setup fee. And people are like, what's that? I'm like, well, it's the shit you don't see fee.
Right.
Like you don't see the time I'm shopping, I'm cleaning at the kitchen, and everything. Because each party, it would probably be like a 12 to 14 hour process between the shopping, the dough, prepping, running to the kitchen, and then wherever the party was could be an hour and a half away, and I get there 2 hours early, and then
not a lot of people were doing this at this time either. I mean, the Rockbox, the portable pizza oven, you needed a pizza oven on wheels before this.
Yes, this was like I think I was one of the first really to the market with like these little portable ovens,
right.
And that was huge, I think. And so that was a big plus. Just
right.
that like I saw these ovens, and I was like, oh, this is like that's kind of like was my epiphany moment. Like I could do something with.
I had the 17-inch uni oven. It's pretty fun.
Oh yeah, that's like what is that? The Coda, right?
Yeah,
Those,
the Coda.
like,
yeah, they're fun. So so you said $275 just to cover like you're out the door. Like this is like to cover all this shit you don't see.
Yeah.
And then was it per like pizza ball? Like did you have like different tiers or?
I would do. I think I used to do it by tiers when I first started, and I can't quite remember what the pricing was. Then I just started going like $20 a head, and then but it was still like there's another thing because I changed it because people were like. Again, I was too cheap, but I had that in mind at first, like as I was becoming known. But then when I saw that, like, geez, God, I just rejected like $100,000 in parties this year because there was only one me.
Right.
I was like, I can give myself a raise now because
right.
the demand is there.
Right.
And so then I started going $20 a head. But then I was looking at like other folks, and I'm like, man, people are still charging much higher than me. But at the end, I'm like, well, you know what? This is a reasonable amount. It's pizza. And I always like to like be a man of the people. And I felt like that's, part of it was like, so I kept it like reasonable. Like, I mean.
25, 30?
Yeah, like I think between 20 and 25.
Okay.
And it was,
And how many different people were on average going to these private parties?
It would be like I would do a minimum of 25. And then it was like 50, 75, 100 people. Like 50 to 100 was like really like my wheelhouse. There was times people would ask me like, oh, can you do this party at 200? And I was like, no, because I couldn't do you the service that it would require. Like
right.
The last thing I don't have the flexibility to have a shitty review.
So you could do like 2,200 per party if you had like 100 people at that party.
Yeah.
Right? So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
For a day's work, right? Like how many people are you bringing with you?
No money.
That's a lot of profit.
Yeah, just me. And it was
your operational costs aren't much. You got to cover your commissary fee, your monthly commissary fee. What was that?
That was that. I mean, a few $100s. I mean, it wasn't like paying rent in like
Call it $300 a month, $400 a month.
I would say it would get maybe $400 or $500. Depends because the more parties, the more hours I was in the kitchen.
This covers your cost of goods too, so that's everything's included. You're not.
Yeah, so that would cover the cost of goods. And
flour, not that expensive.
Flour's not that expensive. Cheese is expensive, and the cheese price. I mean, after COVID, like the cheese price went up.
What would you say your cost of goods was, like percentage wise?
Percentage wise, God, I'd have to. I'm trying to think about it. Like it's so funny. This is something that a couple of years ago I'd rattle off like the top of my head. I'm just trying to think of how much.
Pulling out the calculator now. So if you're saying, let's say an average $22 a head, right?
Yeah.
To average it out between 20 and 25. So $22 per head, and you're doing on average, what, 75 people?
Yeah, I would say, yeah.
Times 75, you're looking at 1,650 plus the 275, right?
Yeah.
So you're looking at 1,925, and you said you do that 4 times a week?
Yeah, like that, especially in the warm time of year. So
you're at 7,700 a week, and your operational expenses were the cost of goods.
Yeah.
Which what percentage is that, you say?
The cost of goods at that time?
Call it 30%, 40%?
Yeah, I would say.
So 7,700 times 0.30, you're at $2,310 was your cost of goods. And then you factor in the, plus, we'll say 400 for your commissary space. You're at 2,710. So your profiting about $5,000 a month.
Yeah.
Or a week, approximately.
Yeah, that's like when things are like really on fire. But then you have to like also like, that
balance
it out because of the cold season.
Right.
And I could take jobs in the cold season, but it would just far and few between because it would suck being out there when it was 3 degrees. And I would be out there like not feeling my feet.
So you're profiting about $40,000 a year. Is that safe to say?
I would say more than that at the time. Yeah.
So that's still pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, it was
lots of flexibility, lots of work-life balance. You don't have the headaches of managing a staff.
No, didn't have them.
And all that
Yeah.
stuff.
The only thing was those were like all the weekends. Like every summer weekend was like it was gone. And that's that was the unfortunate part about it because like every time like my family's at parties with everybody, and then I'll show up like right as everybody's leaving, and like I felt bad at that point because my kids are like at the party and everybody's dad's there. They're swimming in the pool, they're playing baseball, or just whatever they're doing. And I wasn't there for that. Like I had flexibility during the week. I could always, I could see them, I could take them places, and I could run to the games in the morning. But that was the hard part about it. It was like I was trading the weekends and like the time with my kids when they were younger.
So at what point do you start saying like I've done enough where I have the name, I have the reputation, I can go to a brick and mortar?
I want to say that was it was probably around 2021. I would be because like we still were like doing gangbusters. And when I say we, I just always consider that like my wife and I because we're as a family. So that I knew once we were still like in demand during COVID. No matter what was happening, people were like, "This is perfect. We want that." Like so, I was like, God, I'm like people are still like craving the pizza, and I was like, I think it's time to start looking. But I had a very unique space in mind. I wanted something small.
What was your vision?
I wanted something
small,
like 600 square feet, give or take. I wanted, there was, ideally I would have loved a spot like right on like a tree-lined street and just where people could line up outside and I could see people walking by. But that you can't just predict that space is going to become available.
Coming in. People are walking by. You got different windows.
Oh yeah, this is not like I didn't like this was like a juice bar, like a vegan place before I had taken it over, and this was a place that I think it was October of 21. I think it was right around then, and I saw that this place was like vacant. I was like, oh, I think I made a call, and then I think through the grapevine, somebody's like, oh, I think somebody else is taking it over, same kind of concept. So I was like, all right, I did my homework, I looked into it, and then it was, I was constantly looking. People were always like, oh, you're gonna open a place? You're gonna open a place? I said, yeah, but I just haven't found anything. I would always keep, like an eye on. I can't think of the name of that website that does like restaurants and stuff.
Restaurant for sale?
Restaurant for sale. Maybe it's something like I can't. There's certain information I just delete after a while.
Right. So you said the vision was something small. Why small? Why 600 feet? What were you going after?
Just the way the model is now, I wanted to work on a limited quantity of dough. I wanted to keep everything like fine-tuned. I wanted to do quality over quantity. I have a funky business model. I don't have a phone. I don't have online ordering. It's cash only. You have to come down and order in person. And I knew that, all right, I needed something small because I didn't want to waste square footage.
Right.
Like that would just not be sustainable for the business model I wanted. And it'd be like entirely unnecessary to have all this because I didn't want to have a sit down. I wanted to have a place people took it to go and, that just like kind of like a good little chill spot. I kind of took the idea. There was a pizza place in Philadelphia, Pizzeria Badia, and he did limited dough, cash only. And I saw that spot, and I was like, man, that's it. And if it works somewhere like Philly, like why can't it work? If this guy can pay his rent in Philly, I was like, I can certainly like do this.
What were the benefits of limited dough? Why was that so important to you?
Quality.
Yeah.
I could churn out like 100, 200 pizzas a day, but in the back of my mind, I don't know if pizza 125 and 150 are going to be as high quality as the first like 50 or 60 I did. My issue is I'm like way too emotionally attached to the product,
right.
and if I sprinkle a little cheese too heavy in the middle and I see it like sags a little bit, I just like, shit, I wish I had that one back. And I'll take that home with me. It's like, and I can't be that way. I have to like try and break that. So I can tell, because there's days, we might push it up to like 60 doughs, and being that it's just me baking, I can start telling like, all right, when I'm at the point, like I'm stretching it, I'm dressing the pizzas, I'm cooking the pizzas. So by the time you get to that and like a mad rush, like being a one-man band, it's like I can tell when I'm getting fatigued and like, if I start slipping a little bit, and I don't want any fuck-ups.
Right. So if you could distill what your passion is, like what is your desire? What is your passion?
My passion is just I want people to have like a kick-ass pizza. I want this place to like be like something that maybe they look back on like 30 years ago. Like, you remember that like crazy dude in the tannery, and his pizza was awesome, and he was so like always smiling. Like, I want to be happy with what I'm doing. I want to love it, and I do.
Yeah.
And that's like really where the passion comes in. And I want something that works for me and works for my family life.
Right. And that was a big part, I think, when I first came by to introduce myself. I mean, that was like one of the first things that came out of your mouth was, I want that balance. So you're not open Saturday, you're not open Sunday, and you're not open Monday. I mean, I feel like Saturday and Sunday are big pizza days for families.
Oh yeah, I like from a business sense, like yes, I'm leaving a ton of money on the table. But I can make it up. I can make up that money like in the years moving forward. But I'm never gonna make up that time with my kids.
Right.
And that, to me, like that's the most important part of it all.
I want to get into the years moving forward, but right now, in terms of like what it took to get this spot open. So in 2022, October 2022, you saw that it was available. You're still looking around. What changed?
I came back. October 21.
21.
And then I didn't hear anything back, or somebody said it was already wheels in motion for something else.
Actually, real quick, did the pandemic help your catering company?
Oh yeah,
I would have assumed it did.
It was like the perfect thing. It was,
right.
And it was, outdoors. People could spread out, and it was, I was like the wheelhouse thing. People wanted to have parties. They weren't comfortable going to restaurants, or they couldn't have the size crowd at the restaurant they wanted. So I was like
set up for it.
Yeah. Like I was just.
I thought that might have been the case. I was curious. So back to 2021, October 2021. When did you hear back from the space was open?
I happened to come back in February of 22, and my parents were in town, and it was my son's birthday. So like, and we were going to Henry Bear. Like, my father's like, I want to get a little extra something for, And we were there, and I saw that it was still nothing happening here. And so they had like it was like an old pew like by one of the windows, and I like stood on the pew, and I'm like looking in the window, and I heard one of the side doors open that actually it's the back entry for the toy store. I didn't know that at the time, and I was like, oh God, I hope whoever comes out of that door is somebody who works.
Right.
And then it was one of the workers, and I was like, hey, you know what's going on with this spot? And they're like, oh, just here, call the office. And so I did, didn't hear anything, and then I happened to be in Miami. We were, on vacation with the kids, and then I got a call from like the owner, and like, hey, I'd love to meet you. And I'm like, oh, this is great, really like few like nice days in Miami. And then I was like, usually you're coming back home in like that winter time of year, you're like depressed. And I was like, oh man, I was like, I had some juju. I was like, we're gonna meet. And I sat down with the owner, David, and he was like,
the owner of the tannery?
Yeah, the owner of the tannery. And we just hit it off. Like, we had a very good rapport. Like, he had a great energy. He liked my energy. My friend Carol, who's was involved in real estate, she's like, I'll help you out. Like, we'll go, I'll like hold your hand throughout this whole thing. And like David and I were talking, and he's like, oh yeah, and then maybe one day like we'll do like a pizza outside or something. I was like, oh, this is great. It's and then I was like, is this guy is like salt of the earth? I'm like, is he bullshitting me? It's like, this guy's too good to be true.
Yeah.
And so, we had some like hoops to jump through as far as like getting the place, because I had to take over a lease that somebody had and like buy them out. And of course, it was like, there was a lot of stuff left here. So it was like.
So was it still a juicery stuff that was in here?
It was, yeah. There was a ton of shit in here, and like I didn't need all of it. So it was like, well, I kind of like want this much money, and I was like, well, I really only think I want this much, and so I don't like I can't really justify meeting that number. So there was some headbutting on that, and like any kind of business deal, it got little like, a little animated. But at the end of the day, I had a firm number. I wasn't like trying to like screw anybody. I was just like, this is my number. This is what I'll pay for it. And so they were like, no. And I was like, all right, I understand. Like,
no,
like,
being the people that had the lease that you had to take over.
Yeah, they didn't like my offer. And then I was like, okay. I was like, I get it. And like, they're like, oh, we have somebody else who will pay full price. I'm like, yeah, I get it. This is not personal. Like,
yeah.
And then they came back and I was like, no. I was like, this is still my number. And I wasn't trying to be a dick. I was just like, this is my number.
Yeah, this is what I need to make it work.
Yeah. Then they came back and they're ready to walk away. And then I was like, all right. And then they came back and they're like, okay, like,
What was the number? Do you mind me asking?
The number? No, I was, for everything, I want to say it was like 25 or 30 grand or something.
Okay.
Like for like the stuff. And it was like, there was a good amount
Does that include the lease buyout?
No, that just include like the equipment and everything in here. So that was like that was in order for them to give up the lease. So it was like, and I get it. Like they had their business side of things. Like I had my goals, they had their goals, but like I knew like, hey, this is a want and not a need at the moment. Like I could just keep on catering and then wait for something else to come along.
Right.
And so like having that in my back pocket, like knowing that, I was like,
wait for the right opportunity. Don't put yourself in a position where you're not doing good, right?
Yeah, and like where I'm walking in bitter. So
you needed, you said 20,000?
25 to 30, I think.
Yeah, 25,000. What about the build out? Because you didn't have the pizza ovens in here.
No.
Was there a hood? Because if it was like a juicery, I'm sure that there was no hood.
There was a vent.
Okay.
So there was no hood. This place has been 4 or 5 other like kind of food related businesses. And I think people used to cook upstairs. So there was ventilation that ran to the roof. Because when I had the vent guy come in, he said, oh, you're lucky because you have the mushroom fan on top. You have this vent going through here. And given the oven I was getting, he's like, it's not so bad. He's like, you don't need a fire suppression system in here.
Is it a gas oven?
It's a gas oven. So that was originally like one of the problems coming in was like, all right, so now we got all like the bullshit out of the way. But before I could like also sign the lease, I needed to make sure that like I could get an oven in here and like make it function. There's one oven that I wanted. It's like the industry standard, this Pizza Master. And the problem with that's an electrical oven. So I think it needed 200 amps of power. And I had 200 amps total. So I have 100 amps on a circuit down here and 100 amps upstairs. So I'm like, all right, this is like, I can't remember how much the oven was, maybe $30,000. But I was like, oh, so now I got to pay for an oven and upgrade like 10 grand, 15 grand,
right?
Like to upgrade the electricity, and so that's not going to work. Then like the thing about that had the width to fit in because like I don't know what like behind me.
You got 2 ovens behind you.
Yeah, I got the oven behind me. But this is a beam here that we just covered with steel. But the opening by the oven is only 57 inches between there's an old dumbwaiter there and the wall here. So standard, I think is like 60 inches wide is like standard oven. Because I was going to like, all right, maybe I'll get like a stone hearth oven. Too big. Then I saw this Italian one. And the depth of it would like I do my work right over here, like when I'm pouring out the pizzas, but the depth of that would have come out past the sink that's behind me, and that I would have had like a 900-degree oven like roasting me, and I have my uncle here, and my uncle's 77, and I'm like he would just be like, yeah, I was all for helping you, but like this no. So I looked and I'm like, maybe I won't be able to do this place. David was like, you could blow out that old wall, like where the dumbwaiter is. And I was like, well, yeah, I don't want to see what's behind door number 1 because then I might be looking at another 15 grand. Like,
right.
So I found this oven that was a peerless oven, and I had never heard of them, but they specialized. Their niche is we fit in small spaces, and so they have a 56-inch oven. So I was like, oh, this is great. We're gonna get it in here. That's perfect. These like the accordion style doors that we have. I'm like, I know I could get it in because that's one of the horror stories I always read about. Everybody buys an oven,
can't get it in.
Yeah, they have to like cut the windows out.
Yeah.
But then like I remember like the guy, when he was starting to do the vent work, the lease is signed. And he's like, yeah, he's like 57 inches here, down here. He's like, not so much. I'm like, Annabelle, don't tell me that. I'm like, I'm going to make it work. I'm going to put that oven's going to get in. So he did the vent work, and he was awesome. Like, he was fantastic, customized the hood. So that was good. Like, I thought, like,
So 25,000.
Yeah.
And then how much additional cost into the ovens and the additional things you needed to make the space work?
I want to say, like, it probably came in at like between 90 and 100, and that's including because I was paying rent already too.
Right.
So it took me 9 months to get open.
So was it March of 2022?
So I signed the lease in June of 22, and I didn't get open until March of 23.
Wow.
So
it's 9 months.
Yeah, I think it
And
goes
paying,
back.
and you were paying rent the
Paying
whole time.
rent.
But you were still doing your catering.
Still doing my catering, and then that was like, and then booking parties like crazy because we would book out like 12 months to 18 months out.
Could you still do your prep here without being open?
No, because I wasn't licensed here. So I was also paying for the kitchen space.
Oh, man.
In Amesbury. I was paying like, trying to get licensing for everything else.
How did we start today's conversation? What was the quote?
What was it called? Oh, every day in every way. Better and better and better. And that's when I had to keep bringing that back to myself and, really keep telling myself, like, a lot of meditation.
Yeah.
And I was in,
But you got it done. 9 months.
9 months. But, I mean, there was, like, some dark places.
Where was the darkest point you got to?
I would say the darkest point was signed in June. At the end of, like, I was like, all right, I thought I'd be, like, good to go in November. Like, the end of my catering season, I would just, like, cruise right in. At one point, they couldn't even find the fucking gas line. Like, I knew I had gas in here. The guy told me it ran down, and I must have wasted 3 weeks with, like, National Grid. They're like, no, it's this number. And I'm like, no, like, the meter says this. And they're like, no, we don't have anything there. No, we have this to this address and that. I'm like, no. I'm like, there's gas in here. And you got to call this guy. And then I call this guy. No, you got to call him. And then, like, they're like, yeah, we think we found the meter. It's like this. And I'm like, dude, we're not even talking about the same shit anymore. Like, I'm like, you're talking about apples. I'm talking about oranges. It's been 3 weeks. So finally I called, like, the plumber. I'm like, listen, like, I'm like, I have no idea what the hell's going on. I've wasted 3 weeks of my life chasing National Grid. I'm about to, like, explode. And the guy's in. Then he comes in and he's looking around. He's like, I don't know. I'm not really seeing the gas line. I'm like, they told me there's a gas line in here. They found it. It was just kind of, like, funky, I think, the way it ran. So I dropped that down in here. And so that was, like, cool. And, all right, we progress. I got to the point where it's like, oh, God, I put a nail in the wall today. Like, I feel like I did something. Because now I'm just seeing the money burn. Like, the rent is, like, being paid every month. I didn't.
Did you have a runway, like an operational runway to, like, did you have money put aside for all this?
Yeah, we've been, like, squirreling away.
Yeah.
And then there were there was, God, so many, like, highs and lows. I think there was moments of divine intervention that, like David had a cool idea of, like, that's the owner. He's like, oh, would you be open to, like, putting these, like, windows in that, like, bump out? So where I'm cooking, they open, like, a garage door. I was like, that would be awesome. Like, so we did that. Like, something I hadn't really earmarked financially for.
Right.
But I was like, thank God we did it because it makes it so much cooler in here, like, both, like, aesthetically and temperature-wise, like, when we're cooking. And the guys, like, we had talked about it, but never really in detail. And then he called me on a Thursday, and I was actually going to do a party right across, like, the parking lot here. And I was walking out the door, and he's like, I can get the guys here tomorrow. And I was like, he's like, I'll send you the invoice. And I was like, all right, I have your ear. I have it. Like, let me just do it. Like, at that point, it's like Monopoly money. It's
right.
like, and the guys are here working on the window. And that was the day that the oven's arriving. And so I was like, oh, great. This is like landmark day. It's like September. Like, part of the gas line is, like, going to be in the works. They're just waiting. Like, we're going to come once the oven comes in. Like, we found it. We're going to do the work. That's great. Yeah. Finally, like, because everybody's like, so when are you opening? When are you opening? Like, and I'm like, I'm just going to just shut my mouth and shove my head in the sand.
So you got it done. What were the first, this is, you said June of 2023.
March of 2023.
Sorry, March
June
of
2022, we signed
That's
the
right.
lease.
March of 2023, 19 months ago. What were the first days like? What were, like, was it what you expected? Were there challenges, unforeseen challenges?
Yeah, it was. everything was unforeseen at that point. Like, I mean, we were in here 2 nights before I opened, and I'm trying to like fine tune the pizza because I'm a nut. Like, and my wife's like, it's great. Just do it. And then I'm making pizzas, and my daughter's here, and I'm like, it's just, I had dropped off some pizzas for friends. I hadn't heard from them. I'm like, they must hate it. They're like, what's Tony doing? He's insane for opening this place. His pizza sucks. And then I'm like, ugh. And I think everybody was so sick of pizza in my family. And I'm like, it could be better. And my wife's like, it's fine, it's great. And I'm like, to my daughter, I'm like, right? I'm like, it could be better. She's like, yeah, I guess it could be better. And my wife's like, why would you say that to him? And I'm like, that's it. I'm like, we're not opening this week. I'm like, she's like, then my buddy texted me. He's like, dude, that pizza was perfect. It was great. I'm like, oh, you have no idea how much I needed to hear that. So got the health inspector came, I think on like Tuesday or Wednesday. And she's like, so you're good to open whenever. And my wife's like, and I had dough ready to go. And she's like, tomorrow. She's like, we're opening tomorrow. And that was like awesome. The first day was great. Like, we sold out right away.
50 pizzas.
Yeah, I think the first day I did 30 pizzas because I had no idea who was coming, and I wanted to give myself a little bit of leeway. And then, but I didn't know what I was doing. Like, I knew what I was doing, but like operating this place, like, should I, now I'm more efficient. Like, I wasn't cleaning up as I went along. I was just like, I felt like I had to be down here the whole time smiling. And then I was standing there at about 8:00 that night, and we probably had sold out at like 5. And I'm like doing dishes, and I'm like, fuck. I'm like, what did I do? This is like the rest of my life. I'm like, I'm never going to see my kids again. I'm like, I was just so overwhelmed. It was like, I reached the top of the mountain. I reached my goal. Here it was open.
Yeah.
And then it was like, inspiring, but also like a little bit like, well,
I'm too far invested now.
Now invested,
There's no
but
turning
like,
back.
yeah. And then I'm a person who always like kind of needs a goal. And I'm like, well, now what? But then I've learned to work through that. I'm like, you know what? You waited so long to get this, like, enjoy it.
Right.
And that was like that first night. And then a couple of days later, things are going good. But then I'm like so overwhelmed with the pace of this and being in here. Like, when am I doing things? Like, how can I be more efficient? And then I think in the second week, I fucked up my bench flour. So like that I would use to like, break the moisture of it. And I was using the wrong flour. And I like my pizzas were like charring on bottom. Like, I like to have a char on my pizza, and they were charring on bottom. And I was like, what the fuck? And they were like charring way too fast. And then like some guys, like I see him like sitting there, and I'm like, this guy looks pissed off. And he's like, it's fucking burnt. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm like growing pains. I'm like, I will make you a new pizza. I was like, here's your money back. I will own up to my mistakes. I had one of the great things, in radio, like I took all those lessons along with me. And my old boss, Melissa, when I would mess up, she'd be like, Tony, like, you come in here and you're like, well, and I know like you're giving me a load of shit. She's like, just say I fucked up.
Yeah.
And she's like, and that's the best thing you can do. And I learned that. And I'm like, I'm sorry, man, I screwed up. And
so
then
you use a separate flour to basically to be able to open the pizza on the table, and that was burning.
And that had a low. Like, I use a blend of flours for my dough. And then there's one that has a higher burning point that I could use as the bench flour. Okay. And then there's the other one that doesn't. And I couldn't figure it out. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like 2 weeks into this. Like, I got a bad review. I'm like fucking crushed. And I'm like, I can't do this. I'm like, this is a disaster. And then all of a sudden it was like 4:00 in the morning. I opened my eyes and I was like, it's the bench flour. And then like I came back in the next day. I was like, all right, spring in my step. And I was like, all right, and then I was still learning the oven, but then I was like, all right, I got it now, and it was just these like little growing pains. And people are so quick to like light you up and like publicly dog you.
So how long would you say it took you to like kind of get operating on all cylinders?
I don't know if I'm operating on all cylinders yet. I want to say it took, I would say 6 or 7 months to where I knew it's like, all right, I'll ball the dough up like during service, during like slow times, because we were so busy, so fast that it was like so overwhelming.
Were you selling out every day?
Yeah, I mean, one of the first Fridays we sold out at like 12:48.
What time did you open?
11:30.
So you sold 50 pizzas.
And I was still making pizzas for a few hours, and there was like, I mean, I came in one day like just to get a coffee before service, and there was like, 20 people like in the hallway lining up around. But then it was like, we got this stigma that was like, oh, they sell out every day at like 1:00. So it was like a blessing and a curse at the same time because it was
people
like
stop showing up.
Yeah, people like give up, like, oh, it's 1:30, I'll never get a pizza. And even though we announce it online and we try and communicate as best that we can, and now that's like mellowed out, but a little bit, but people still assume that, and I'm fine that like if we sell out like 4 o'clock on like 3:30, 4 o'clock on Fridays during the week, it's a little bit later, and I'm cool with that because I'd rather make the pizzas, talk to the customers, get to know everybody, than like be done in 3 hours because we could be sold out by 2 o'clock, but I'll still be here till 7 o'clock because it's like a bomb exploded in here. But I think the even pace of that is great. We'll be like cranking from 11:30 to 1:30, get a little bit of a break. So now I know I can go ball up the dough instead of doing it after service. I can go do some cleaning and I can get some prep done for the next day. So I think it was really about 6 or 7 months that like I really started seeing this. It's like when I used to private chef, if people were having an ossobuco, I felt like they needed to watch like the whole process, and I needed to be at their house for like 6 hours before dinner.
So on average, your pie is $22.
Yeah, these are taxes included in these prices.
Okay. So $22, you're doing 50 pies a day.
Yeah, like 40 to 50.
Okay, are you selling out every day?
If we don't sell out, we usually have a couple of doughs left over.
Okay, so on average, you're doing about $1,100 a day on pizza.
Give or take, it's a little bit, like I would say a little bit less than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I guess like, how long do you think you are gonna have the passion to be the person that's doing everything every day? Like is that what you want? Is that your passion? Do you think that's the thing that will keep you going, or like is there something beyond this that you want?
Right now, to go back to that point of like I've gotten to where I want to be as far as having an establishment and like doing my thing. I think right now I'm just gonna enjoy that. I'm very much a forks in the road kind of guy,
right.
And I'm not looking too far down the road as far as like what is next. Like if somebody came up to me and was like, "Dude, we'd like to like buy your recipe and we'd love your business model because we can see it functioning." With 2 or 3 person staff, and we only need, this is 800 square feet, 400 upstairs, 400 downstairs, and we love your business model. Like, we want your dough recipe, then that's like, maybe like, I don't know if I'd be ready for that now, but like 5 years down the road,
right.
Maybe after I kick the shit out of myself a little bit more.
Right.
That would be, but for right now, like, I'm so passionate about it, and I would hate to work for me.
Right.
Right now, I'm a nice guy, and I don't break balls like but the way I talk to myself when I'm on the line, like I would be like, my son could like, I'll be 94. If say we had a pizzeria still when I'm 94, I'll still be like over my son's shoulder, like, you're really gonna do the dough that way, like.
So I mean, I'm thinking about my conversation with Tim O'Brien, who referred me to you, and like a big part of what drove Tim was like the pride in the work that he does, and he knows, like, he's somebody who's sold out, like he's got reservations like 3 months out in advance booked, and like we got to the conversation of like increasing prices, supply and demand, and he's like, I don't care, but he's like, I just want to be able to do what I love and to offer it at a good price point, and it's not about how much money I can make, but it's about the passion of the work, the integrity of the work, and being able to do what I love and educate people on what I do. So what is it for you? Like, what is the thing that drives you? Because it sounds like you could, move into a bigger space and maybe do 150 pizzas a day, and you have the audience, the following to keep up with that, but you're choosing the ceiling, right? So like, take me through that thought process.
It's very much like what you just said about Tim. I mean, it's a passion play for me. I love doing it, and I love that people like come and like, wow, this is like a special pizza, and I haven't had a pizza this good in like 10 years, or like, oh, we were just in Brooklyn, and we don't have to drive to Brooklyn. Like, this was a really solid pie. And that's like, that's what it's the same thing. Like, I want to get, like, I don't want to overcharge for pizza. I don't want to give like a shitty product. Like, the demand could be there. Like, I mean, we could easily do 150 pizzas a day. We could get a phone and we could just crank it out. But it's at the end of the day, it's like, it is a money thing, but it's not a money thing.
Right.
Like, money's not the driving force for me.
So what's that guy, Dave, the one bike dude?
Yeah.
What's his last name?
Portnoy.
Yeah, Portnoy. What if he comes in here and you get an 8.8, right? and you're selling out every day by noon, would you think about increasing prices if you know that you can get a $30 pie?
No.
No?
I think I would, like this holiday season, I'm probably going to open on Saturdays. Just, around my children's schedule, because we're looking to go away like next summer. And I was like, all right, well, I don't have PTO, so I need to make up those days as, a responsible person, and the kids understand that. But, I think I would just have to keep it as business as usual. I wouldn't be like overreactionary to that. I love that you like dropped an 8.8. That would be like something. But people come in, they're like, "Oh, I
don't think anybody's ever gotten that high of a score."
I think the Brooklyn guys have, but
really?
like I think a 9.4 for DeFaris, but he's like the OG, And people are like, "Oh, let's get like Portnoy in here. Like I know him. Somebody knows him." I'm like, dude, like, do you guys like getting pizza here? Like, he went. They get some great scores in like Chelmsford and another place in Andover, North Andover. And like those, like they did, like they had to change the business model, and like I'm like, God, I feel like it's like presidents, they like after 4 years they're like gray and disheveled. I'm like, that's what would happen, and I don't know, like would it be cool for the ego? Like, yeah, man, if he was in here, and like for like people I haven't seen in like 20 years,
it might help the resale value of if you want to sell that.
Like if we want a frozen pizza line, if we just wanted to like whore ourselves out,
right? Or
like people like who are like all my buddies when I left, like not all my buddies, but people are like when I left a good paying job, like in a bad economy, like, dude, you're fucking crazy,
right? So like what's like where are you at today? Paint the picture of where you're at today, what your life looks like today.
My life, I'm in a good spot right now. Like I feel like this place is finally like a well-oiled machine. Like I have my routines down. I have the balance where like I know how to get out and get cleaned up based on the clock. I make most of the games for my kids.
What time are you here in the morning?
I usually get here about 8. I get up at 4:40. This way I can do like, whether it's some paperwork or like exercise, because I have to stay like in shape because this place is a beast. Like spiral staircase, carrying 50-pound bags of flour up. It's I like to, be ready this way. The kids are up, see them before school. I'm usually at the market somewhere in the 7 o'clock hour. 8 o'clock, 8:30, I get here.
What market are you going to?
I go to Market Basket, and that's because they great savings. Like I do use a distributor for some things, but like again, it's like back to like the passion of doing it right, and like Tim would probably subscribe to this. Like, do you like make a little extra money for a lesser product, or do you do it the right way? And doing it the right way is like the key. So Market Basket, like I could get like Carbone cheese, and that fluctuates. Used to be $2.99, now it's $4.99 a pound. The saturated fat content is 21%, and they set it with vinegar instead of a cheese culture. I could buy it from a distributor, and right now I usually pay around $4.99 a pound. And I could get it from a distributor for, I want to say like $3.99 a pound, maybe even less than that. Carbone, but it's like the professional Carbone, 23% saturated fat. They set it with cheese cultures, and that little like 2% difference in setting pulls a little grease on the center of it. And I bought like 70 pounds like the first time, and like I started using it, and I was like,
the worst 70 pounds of your life.
Yeah, and I was like, I called my wife right away. I'm like, you got to get to Market Basket because I need some fucking Carbone now. I'm like, this shit's pulling grease, like having a heart attack. And I'm like, I could probably save $8,000, $10,000 a year if I use that cheese. I can't do it.
Yeah. So you're up at 4:30. You're at the market by 7.
Yeah. So I go to Market Basket. I get my cheese like every Monday. Like the cheese guy, the dairy guy Brian gets me my my cheese. I go through there depending on what the special is. And then I come here Mondays. I make the special. Usually I go get like, I buy fresh basil every day because the basil shelf life like is pitiful. And then so I come in here. I prep out like I'll make the dough for the next day at the beginning of the week. As the week goes on, I might have to re-prep the special. Like this week, I'm going to do like roasted mushrooms with cherry peppers over garlic sauce. So depending, which part of that runs short, I'm constantly re-prepping the special to try and get it to at least like through like 70% of our inventory on Friday. And, after that, it's like, you can never tell how well it sells.
So you prep everything. You're open by 11:30.
11:30. So it's like, I come, I do some cleaning, and shred cheese. So it's like, there's always something to do. It's like, that's the
Typically, when are you sold out?
Fridays, like 3:30, 4 o'clock. During the week, it's like anybody's guess. Some days it could be like 4. Sometimes we're there till 5:45. It's like, a lot of it depends on the school year and what's going on. Like the holiday season, like last year, it was pretty efficient. I would say the days were like 4:30, 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
And everything fluctuates. We go by the school year. It's in the summers, we're done around like 4:30, 5 o'clock.
Are there days you don't sell out?
Yeah, there are days we don't sell out. I mean, but when we don't sell out, it's like just a couple of doughs left over.
Yeah. When do you choose to close? If you what's that cutoff point for you?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
Yeah.
And when are you out of here by typically?
I would say usually it's like 7 o'clock. I mean,
So
we could sell
12-hour
that we could sell that at 3 o'clock. I'm out at 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
We could, if we close at 6, depending on how that hits, like, we might be out of here by like 7. Depends, because it's like you get that last minute rush, and then it's like you're set back, and it might be 7:30.
So what about on Saturday and Sunday? Like, what you have your morning routine where you come and you prep all the dough, and you're out of here by what, like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock?
Yeah, usually, I try and get in here by like 6 o'clock in the morning.
You don't have to go to the store because...
Well, usually, sometimes I might need something for like, like odds and ends to like make the dough, or there might be something like, sometimes I might be experimenting with something. So I'm always at the store.
Got it.
What up, Unstoppable restaurant owners and operators? We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that Restaurant Unstoppable and Restaurant Systems Pro, we're taking our relationship to the next level. Beginning in July of 2024, Fred Langley, CEO of Restaurant Systems Pro, is making himself available once a week in Restaurant Unstoppable Network to answer all of your restaurant systems questions, whether it's the profit margins. He will look at your P&L. Bring your P&L. He will take a look at that. He will dissect it. He will help you find your profit, whether that be through budgeting, inventory management, costing and recipe cards, labor, checklists, you name it. He is a master of restaurant systems, and he's making himself available to you. Fred Langley and Restaurant Systems Pro started as a consulting firm, and for over 16 years, they've been helping their clients increase their profit by 10% or more. What are you waiting for? Click the link below to join our Facebook group, Restaurant Unstoppable Network.
So you've taken us through basically the life of Tony Carbone. This was a very intentional life that you built. I think that's one thing I really wanted. I think we kind of touched on that. Like, why was that so important to you? Being able to have the work-life balance, being able to close Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Like, do you feel overwhelmed? Do you feel burned out? Like, do you have the balance you're looking for?
I think I have the balance that I'm looking for. I mean, there's always that overwhelming feeling because there's always like, shit, there's always something to do.
Right.
And that, but I mean, that's for everybody. I mean, you don't need to have an establishment for that. I mean, the way the world is now with like, with email and our devices and everything, like people can find you at any time. So It's like your life is on demand for everybody. But I think as for being able to do what I love, like I love this. I love making pizzas. I love, sharing it with people and seeing them enjoy the food and being able to do that, have a family and spend time with them and have my weekends with them. I mean, I can't really ask for anything more right now.
Right.
Like it's, that's what it's all about. And I'm happy right now. And I think that's where my majority of my wealth is, like my happiness.
Right. So no technology in the business.
Right.
Pretty intentional about that. Do you find it struggling managing all that cash? Like, what's the process in terms of like keeping track of like the taxes and the cash flow? And you don't have payroll because you have your uncle working.
Yeah,
here?
but my uncle he does it out of the goodness of his heart. But that stuff, I think to me it's easier just to do it like with like I have like a ledger and then I do my meals tax online. And then I use some QuickBooks just for my accountant because ease of execution for them to do everything. But that's just a matter of, that's just like anybody's, homework that they have to do.
Right. Just one more stop on the way home, drop the cash off the bank.
Well, we don't want to talk about the process. We have Vinny comes by and grabs the cash. Nobody's gonna bother Vinny.
Right. I got you. What's the future look like for you? Do you see any type of evolution, or are you happy, or is it where you want it to be?
It's never going to be where I want it to be. There's never going to be like the perfect pizza. It's constantly a work in progress. Like another quote I like to always remind myself of is always a student, sometimes a teacher, never a master.
Right.
So, and I think that's just the way that it can always get better. And as far as where I want it to be, the end goal, I very much subscribe to if you work hard and you put your best foot forward and the passion's there, that the forks in the road present themselves.
Right.
And right now I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and then at some point an opportunity is going to present itself. And people, I've had, requests for people we'd be open to doing this. You want to do that? And I don't want to get into specifics. And I'm well, let's talk about it. But I probably won't, because I want to have my ownership. Really, my goal is to one day to I want to be an OG, I want to be like a Defara when people look back and be like, man, I can't believe that little place was in Newburyport. But that's just those are hopefully realistic goals. As far as the business itself, something will come along and present itself.
Yeah. You seem like the kind of person, like you said, always a student, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes a teacher. Do you see yourself getting the next bug, the next thing that you want to do, the next project where you can remove yourself from the day-to-day of this, to be more of a teacher, to kind of fill your shoes, have somebody come in who wants to be a pizza master, give them have them taken you to your place so you can go do the next thing? Or do you think this is it?
No, I think at some point, that person will come along, and then maybe I will open up a second establishment, and I'll have trust in them. It's when I used to work in radio, the guy I used to work with, he's like, the owner of this company wants people working here who feel that they own the company. And I kind of feel like that about this place. Whoever's going to come in here, I'm going to need to get that vibe that they'll own it and that they'll make it their own.
Would you let them have a stake in the business to say they own a bit of it?
Yeah. I think if I found the right person, I would absolutely do that. And that was one of the things that had been in my back of my head, whether if I wanted to open up a second spot, I would, tutor, somebody in here, get them up and running and say, listen, dude, I will take care of you. Or, when the time comes, if you treat this place with the respect it deserves, and I'll take care of you, I'll give you X percentage of this place, while I go off and open up the second place.
What would the second place be? Another Epicureo?
I think maybe another Epicureo, or it depends if I got the bug to go back and maybe do a little bit more traditional cooking, that maybe something definitely pizza based, but maybe a couple of appetizers, but 10 tables,
yeah.
BYOB.
Yeah.
Just something nice and chill where I can just watch multiple people enjoying themselves. Or if I just at times I do think about replicating this place, because now the first place took me 9 months to open, and I learned so much that I think that all right, the next time I walk into a place, I can just be all right, it has this, it doesn't have that, we need to do that, and it can get it open in a matter of months as opposed to 9 months, because I know exactly what I need to do, so I won't waste money. Looking like an idiot.
Right.
And and then it also depends. My kids are young. I would never force this upon them, but my son does take interest, but he's 9.
Right. They have to want it, right?
Yeah. And if he were that this is almost something all right, well, I will just, I'll maintain this for him and then to keep the name going on. But I honestly, in my heart, in my mind, I know that big things are going to happen. I don't know what they are, but
right.
At some point this place will be a name, and there's always opportunities that for somebody even like Tim O'Brien, so wildly popular that people are going to look at him, and at some point somebody might come at him for a cookbook or a Williams Sonoma and dude, we're going to pay you X amount of money to come make pasta here. And I I don't know what that opportunity is for pizza people, but I think that that same kind of opportunity could present itself to me. It's oh, dude, we want you here. It's just, the world's crazy and there's a wild amount of opportunities.
Yeah, man. We've covered a lot. I mean, we shared your story, what you were doing before this, how you got to the point where you could do what you're doing now. Congratulations on the success you're having.
Thank you.
As we look to the future, one thing that I kind of like, our mission statement is to change the world through inspiring and empowering the restaurant industry. And I believe that the restaurant industry has the power to change the world. So in the terms of change, things that are the status quo for our industry right now that you think could change or should change, what comes to your mind? What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
I think change by taking a step back.
The industry could change by taking a step back.
Like a step back to just like more of the traditional things. Like we talk about like, food and health and everything and slowing things down a little bit. And that's like kind of why we have the model that we do. Also, like, no phone and like people have to come down here because it slows people down for a second. And I think that if we can get back to like I know I was born in the wrong like decade.
I say that all the time.
Like I want like people should know like who's making their food and like instead of we just order things online. And I feel that it would be better for our industry. Like if you went to a place and you had to look a guy in the eye every single time you were down there and you're like, oh man, Joe's a really nice guy. It might take a step back from like people just lighting up a place, because their French fries were soggy or some shit.
Right.
And then they have a connection and be like, man, Joe's a nice guy and he's just trying to make a living and maybe the French fries were bad that day. And I feel for him,
Right.
And I feel like if we know each other and we can look each other in the eyes and like, I think that just helps the industry as a whole because people wouldn't be so quick to judge you and like have that freedom. If they have to look you in the eye,
right.
Like when they come back, it's like, yeah, shit, man, I just did like dog you with 1 star on Google and like, wrote a 37 paragraph like shitstorm.
Yeah. Well, I think of Jeff Finster right now who owns Evolve. I think it's Evolve or Everbowl maybe. Yeah, Everbowl, and his slogan is de-evolve. And it's weird because I feel like I found myself in the middle, like constantly looking ahead to like what are the trends in the industry, like how's the industry evolving in the sense of technology, and how do you do more with less? How do you lean more on automation? How do you leverage different technology so you can have lower labor costs and like all these things where like there's that side of the story where I think it's in human nature to constantly be evolving and to do the thing better, to make a newer piece of technology that's better than the last. Like we're constantly making things, right? But at the same time, being in the middle, I look back and I'm like, I think sometimes the answer to our future is in recognizing who we are and where we came from as a species. As like, what does it mean to be human? How did we evolve to exist 10,000 years ago when we were hunter-gatherer bands? And like, we evolved over that million of years to be a perfect creature for that type of lifestyle. That was our lifestyle for the majority of our existence. And are we evolving away from that where we're moving into this technological world where we're leaning on automation and AI and all these things? And it's like, are we our happiest version of ourselves in that world? Or do we take this moment to pause and say, do we need more technology in our lives? Do we need more efficiency? Do we need more throughput? Do we need more volume? Do we need to do more with less? Or can we choose to do it the hard way, the slow way, the way that forces you to get out of your living room and go down the street and talk to Tony and develop a relationship with Tony and to have a conversation with people and to be in the same room with people? And the thing is technology might evolve exponentially, but at the end of the day, we're still humans. And if that technology exists to serve us, is it really serving us if it's forcing us to be less human? So like, what's that balance look like? How do we find that balance?
I think that it's a very like individual answer, but I think finding that balance is like, for me, is to go back to like what we were just talking about. I think, it does serve its purposes in some aspects. But when you look at it, like, you talked about like what we used to be like and how we used to do things. And I feel like that's been dismantled in like a couple of generations. It's like nobody knows how to like, grow plants anymore and like feed themselves. And if it takes a little bit longer, I mean, to me, longer is better. It's like, right, you could go to like, a pizza place that's just looking to pump out their dough. Like, we made it this morning. We're pumping it out. Here you go. It's quick. It's fast. Is it better? My dough takes 3 days. And, there's that time, there's that effort into it. But is it that extra time worth it? I think so.
Yeah.
And then I think, and I love because people take a deep breath. Sometimes they'll come down here. They have so much shit going on and like, oh God, my world's blowing up at work. Like, I don't know if I should take this pizza to go or just eat it here. And like, if I know them, I'll be like, take 10 minutes, man. Just eat the pizza here.
Yeah.
Just like shut the shit down.
Yeah. I was actually hoping to talk more about the tannery and where we are, and it didn't come out of the conversation, but I want to, before we start to wrap up, identify, like, you are in a really cool spot. This building was built a long time ago, 1985.
Well, it's older than 1985. In 1985, it actually became like
what it is
now.
Yeah, but before that, it was a tannery.
It
was probably built in like the early 19th or like mid 19th century to early 20th century.
Yeah, that's what I would say. I think there's probably a timestamp outside, like on one of the bricks.
It's a couple hundred years old, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I would say yeah.
Yeah. So you have all these different. So where you are is you're kind of like in a if you can imagine like an old school mall,
right? Basically,
in a mill building that feels like a brick building where you have all these businesses surrounding you. There's a coffee shop, there's a tailor, there's a bike store right next door, there's gift shops, there's what else is here?
Well, we have there's a great little market, the Black Duck Market. So this is like we're in the south end of town, and this is like a perfect supermarket for everybody. And people go in there. Ricky has everything, so he has sandwiches. Coffee, ice cream, beer, wine, you name it. There's a place called the Wish Basket. It's like fine, like home furnishing goods, like wine glasses, couches. And I think it originally started out as actually baskets. Like one of the guys told me that, like, there used to be UPS trucks lined up all the way out, and she would just be sending out baskets, but it evolved. There's a florist. There's this place off Amada, which is like an olive oil home goods store.
Yeah.
And they have great foods. And it's just, there's really a lot of like symmetry to everything here. It's like, at least for me, it's like if I need something, I go to the Black Duck instead of having to go all the way to Market Basket in a pinch. There's a toy store. There's a bookstore.
Yeah.
There's
it's a cool spot is the point that I'm trying to make.
Three hair places. There's
So what's cool about this is you're inside a building. You're surrounded by a bunch of other businesses. I'm sure you're selling pizza to those businesses, and then you probably have decent foot traffic in here too throughout the day. And you said you just wanted a place that could be grab and go. There's no seating, but you get the seating of the actual facility you're in, because if you walk the hallways, they're lined with tables.
Yes, and that's like I wanted people to be able to eat the pizza in the area, but I didn't want to have my own like sit down spot.
Right,
like,
take it, grab it, go sit around the corner.
Yeah, go sit around the corner. And there's also dance classes here. So there's a dance school and a music school. So it's great because kids come. There's after school lessons. So we'll get like a lot of the parents like, oh, my kid gets out at 5. I'll grab a pizza for dinner, and it's like a lot of perfect symmetry here, because there's times like if we have a half-hour wait for a pizza, people go around, they'll buy a book, they'll go buy a toy. They go, we don't sell drinks because Ricky across the hall was here first. I don't want to take his drink business. They go get a drink from him. They get a pizza from us. They go get a whoopie pie from Chicoco, a toy, or a book. So it's like this nice perfect symmetry. So when people are waiting, they have something to do, and they can like mind themselves for a half hour.
Yeah. I wanted to bring that into the conversation. I just wanted to do that there. Anything we did not discuss today that you want to bring to the surface before we say goodbye?
Not that I can think of. I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, man, it was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your story. Tons of great advice in this, and really great values came out of today's conversation, to prioritize those values and to build a lifestyle that fits into you and having your standards and your values and not settling for anything less. I think there's a lot to be learned in that.
Yeah, it is, and that like you could do it how you want to do it, like, and then that's. If you stay true to yourself and just, there's so much noise. Like when we were opening this place, everybody's like, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this. And I'm like, nah, just going to do this. Like, you're not, no, none of it. No salads. You got to have salads. I'm like, no, salads spoil this.
There's something to be said about keeping it simple, stupid. And just doing what you do, doing what you love, and being unapologetic about that. And your people will find you. A couple questions I want to ask you before we officially wrap up. Take you through the traditional questions here. So what is one thing about your business, a value, a process, a system that is uncommon and makes you truly unstoppable?
I think that we kind of covered the thing that's different about it is that, it's a very old school model, but I think that we can cater to that by putting out a kick-ass product. And I think that's what makes us unstoppable. Like it's the dedication to the product and not taking any corners, and the fact that we get to know everybody.
Yeah.
Like, when you're on a first name basis with your customers, it makes it so much more homey when they come in and they're like, oh.
We could barely get this episode started today because everybody kept coming by and talking to you.
Yeah, it's you put a smile on your face and you give people something that, like, like I always put it this way. It's like, all right, I know it's a pain in the ass to go to the ATM. It's like we're not a cash-based society for the most part. But it was like, I know we don't have a phone, you got to come down here, but I promise, like, if you put in that part of the effort, we're going to do our part, and we're going to give you, like, everything we have, and, like, put our best foot forward with that pizza. So, and I think that, like, that's what makes us unstoppable. I think we bring people back because a lot of people are always like, I kind of like this. At first I thought you were a pain in the ass, but I kind of like it now.
I look forward to coming down here and seeing you. And
we get a little banter.
Yeah. We need that, and I think that's part of what it means to be human. I think we've lost that. We've traded that for convenience, and I think that the world we live in, the technology companies are telling us that the consumer wants to save more time and money. And that's what we need to prioritize over everything else. But those things, you can have all the time and the money, but if you have no happiness and what you need is human relationships to be happy, you need to be connected with your community, that's what's going to bring you happiness. And I think it's time the restaurant industry starts educating the consumer on, like, you're fucking shit up. Cut it out. Like, come down here. Say hi to me. Be human again.
Yeah, it's the truth.
The mission statement is to change the world by inspiring and empowering the restaurant industry. So how have you personally transformed? So we're going to do that by transforming the restaurant industry. How have you personally transformed? How are you better today versus the man you were when you got started in this business?
I'm better today because I would say belief. Like, I believe in myself, and I believe that, like, I always say to people, like, the American dream kind of exists. If you put your, head down and you work hard, that, if you can see it, you can do it. Like, and I guess that's how I've transformed, because, there's times I look around, like, and I'll just stop, like, in the middle of the day, upstairs, if I'm cleaning something, I'll be like, holy shit, like, how the hell do I know what to do this? Like, how did we get here? And I don't know. I just, I don't know if that's really the answer to how I've transformed, but it's, I just think I'm more confident. I think I'm smarter. And I just think that, I don't know. Just, like, I think the transformation that, like, I'm fulfilled for, like, this was a long journey, like, and then even going from radio into the food world. And I think the transformation was, like, finding that fulfillment. And I think, I have that now.
All right, here's the last question. If you got the news, you'd be leaving this world tomorrow. All the memories of you, your work, and your restaurants would be lost with your departure. With the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom you could leave behind for the good of humanity and your legacy, what would those 3 pieces of wisdom be?
3 pieces of wisdom. I guess my...
One.
I always, like, I think about a song, and the line is, if you go too slow, you never get it. If you go too fast, you never get to get it good.
So finding that balance.
Finding that, like, it doesn't have to be rushed. It's like, take your time, and, like, do when it feels right, you'll know. Like, don't go against your instinct.
What's number 2?
Number 2 is, do what you want to do.
Number 3.
Don't take shortcuts. Like, work your ass off. Like, if you don't take shortcuts, that's...
I like to say the obstacle is the way most of the time. Doing the hard thing is where you're going to find the most fulfillment in what you do. Would you get behind that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I found you because Tim O'Brien called you out. So who do you respect and admire? Who do you, when you think of somebody, whether it be in your community or someplace in the country, who is just doing it right, who's fiscally responsible, who treats their employees right, and somebody who should be made an example of because of the work they're doing?
I would have to say my buddy John Bushnell, who owns the June Cork Pub up in Dover, New Hampshire. John opened his pub during COVID, and I think that's an incredible life lesson. Here's a guy who came from outside the restaurant world, and he had a vision that he wanted to open a soccer-style English pub, and he didn't let anything stop him, and he did it. And the place is like out of sight. I mean, people go there like with their allegiances, whether it's Arsenal or Liverpool. They reserve game times. They have rugby there. They have like all the flags, and I mean, it's like a spot on English style pub. And I think that he had that vision. He stuck to it, and then he got hit with this like major smack in the face of COVID as he was trying to open. So not only like, shit, like I don't even have like regular operating procedure, let alone opening my spot and getting an operating procedure under COVID. And then to have that place still going strong, I think it's just like an incredible testament to what John's done, and like, puts his head down, and he got what he wanted.
I love that. John, look out, I'm coming after you. It was John Bushnell.
John Bushnell.
And that was the June Cork Pub.
Yeah, in Dover, New Hampshire.
Got it. Coming after you. And how can we connect if we enjoyed today's conversation? Maybe we have questions about how you are doing what you did. If we want to recreate what you're doing in our hometown, maybe we want to come work for you, if that's even an option.
Right now, we're not hiring right now outside of the bloodlines. But you can reach me. You can always shoot me a direct message. My Instagram is Epicureo. This is again.
Why don't you spell that one for us?
It's EPICUREO. And my wife's going to kill me because I'm not sure if it's like Epicureo or Epicureo Pizza.
I think it's Epicureo Pizza.
Epicureo Pizza.
Yeah.
See, you know better than I. This is, when maybe she won't make it this far.
Only because I've been tagging you in all my posts recently, so.
So that's probably the best way to reach me. Just shoot like a message, and especially like if people are into the catering aspect, the pizza catering. I've had a lot of people reach out to me, and I'm always there because there were people who lent a hand to me, like when I was asking about catering things, and there were people who wouldn't give you the time of day. So circle of life.
Do you know the Dead Proof guys? Dead Proof Pizza.
I think I know the
Chef Matt Berry.
I think I know it because you just posted something about them, so that's why I know of them.
I'd love to introduce you to those guys. They're doing great work, and I think they're following in a lot of your footsteps. So if there's any lesson you could pay for to them, I'd love to make that connection.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love to help people out, and then like the people who help me, like so they don't make the same mistakes I made. And
I love it, man. Well, this is where I say thank you so much for making the time, for letting me make an example of you, share your story and your knowledge. There is no questioning, my man. You are unstoppable.